Hello and welcome to the Outcast, the Not How to Turn a Dragon podcast. I'm your host HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today we are back with probably the most controversial show we've done on the Outcast so far.
Well, you can't say
And
that now. You have to wait till the end and say that. Now
it's
it may not be
certain reasons
controversial.
why. eh,
Oh, we're doing that.
Okay.
Bye. Recording over. Goodbye. I'm done. I'm out.
Well, that's show, but
I left for a
it'll,
minute.
but
Yeah.
anyway,
Joking
yeah.
aside.
So joking aside, season three of the famous or rather infamous show has come out last Friday. We've watched it. We have some thoughts to say, and we are going to share all of that with you today. But before we start, like if you haven't seen our review of the first two seasons, then get ready for, and you want to catch up on that, get ready for a lot of jumping around because we tried to cover both seasons in one episode, and that wasn't a smart decision on my part, but
It it
I,
came out
I,
okay. It
yeah,
wasn't
I
the
think we,
worst thing we've ever done.
yeah, I think we still have some interesting discussion around it. But if you want to catch up, if you haven't seen it and you want to catch up on everything we thought in more detail, then this is where you should go. Look, so listen to this and come back here.
The day we go
Now,
over anything Sonic related is the day we've done the worst thing possible.
I've already done I've already done something about this, which was me ranting about the
I'm
movie
talking
trailer.
about either me or Rush or both of us with you, though. That's when it's the worst thing we've ever done.
Well,
I got to
we'll
get the
just have to
humor
wait
in
and
now,
see.
HC, because the humor is not going to come as well later on.
Okay, but I will say one thing about not humor, and that's you know when this is a show. To those of you who don't know, but if you don't know this, why the hell are you here? Certain reasons why is a show that touches upon some very heavy stuff like
Mm-hmm.
depression, bullying, suicide, you know,
Rape,
rape, sexual
sexual
assault.
assault, many,
It
many things.
yeah, it touches upon a lot of hard stuff, and I do implore everyone who's listening to this who has suffered or is suffering through something like this, like the show itself says before the beginning of the first episode and at the end of each, go talk to someone. You are not alone. You can you know the, find someone you can talk to about this, seek help as much as possible. But with that said, we are not experts. We are not necessarily understanding every side of depression or anything like this. We are just going to talk about the show for as a show. If we have something to say about the topics of depression and such from personal experience, we might bring this up. But again, we are not professionals in any way, shape, or form. Don't take what we say here as an actual attempt to help. If it helps, good. But we are not experts. We are talking about this as a show, not necessarily what it can do or how it can help. With with that said, we're going to start with a little non-spoilery discussion, and now we need it more, and now we actually need it because this season is really really new.
Uh-huh.
So with that said, Wolf, what are your thoughts about
I
season
have
three?
to go first? Ugh.
Uh,
Um,
you want me to go first?
if you want to, I can go first. If you want to go first, go for it.
Okay, you know what? I'm the one who dragged you.
You're not going
Why
to
you
steal
still
what I have to say on this one.
okay? Basically, um, if you go back to to paraphrase our previous episode about this show, I did say that I enjoyed the first season, while the second one felt a bit unnecessary and wasn't the best.
If I'm
You
not
know, it's
mistaken, I think I was the opposite, mostly, somewhat. I think I disliked it overall, but I liked the second season slightly more. I think. I
li-
could be wrong.
like I appreciated the first season for the stuff it brought to the table, what it talked about. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I enjoyed the first season a lot, and I enjoy. I appreciate some of the stuff that they attempted with season two, but as a season overall, I felt it really lacked, and especially I didn't like the cliffhanger ending. But with that said, season three was a big improvement over season two. I would say that much. I don't think it's as good as the first season for reasons we might get into later, but I thought it was for a season that I feel didn't need to exist. Not that the second one needed, but I I think they actually pulled a lot of cards right with this one. And I will say that, in my opinion, this is the better sequel to the first season.
Hmm. Yeah, we said it before, right? Like, we both agreed that how the second season ended with all of them dancing at the dance in one giant hug, we said that's the way season two should have ended, and that's where 13
Yeah.
Reasons Why should have ended at. On that scene, and just been two seasons, we both agreed, like, that would have been perfect. With that said, I cannot complain about season three. I think it's one of the stronger seasons. I can't believe I'm saying this, and I'm actually complimenting the show, but I think they did a lot more with season three than what I expected them to do, to be quite honest. I expected something a lot worse than what I got, but it had some really good moments in it, and I think it I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, right? Completely where I stand on it, even as of now. I don't think it does everything perfectly this season either, by any stretch. And it definitely comes at a time where I'm curious how people will take it as they see it, right? But I
Yeah.
do think what it's trying to get across at the very least is an interesting message. I'm not sure if it's one that's right or wrong necessarily, but it's definitely an interesting message. It's definitely one that I can see why they chose to do so. And I get it. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, though, well, I'm not 100%
We'll see.
sure.
But overall, I think
I do think there's some definitely good stuff in it, though.
so. Our general thoughts about this season is it's good.
Yeah, surprisingly
So
enough.
yeah. So if you like the show, then I think our recommendation is that season three is definitely worth a watch. And with that said, let's let's give the listeners a chance to close this, go watch the entire season, and then come back because we're about to talk spoilers. And again, this is a new release, so we should we should be careful about this. With that said, spoilers start in three, two, one. Okay, if you're here, spoilers are at Omega level. Let's start, and I think one place we could start with is that Hannah Baker is not a part of this season. Like
I mean,
she's mentioned every so often, but she's not a driving force. Like in the first season, the entire thing was about her tapes. In the second season, it was about her parents suing her mother.
it was about the
Or
trial.
yeah,
The
it was about
trial
the
was the big
trial.
thing. The big thing.
Yeah, yeah, but the trial was her mother suing the school, and now really she's just mentioned every once in a while. She, and I know this might be a bit tricky to get rid of one of the main two characters, But at the same time, I think that was the right decision to go with,
Well, there's no.
because
I mean,
I couldn't stand the idea that like her ghost or her spirit was talking to Clay the entire time in the second season.
they
That was
still
ridiculous.
they still did that this season for a brief moment, but they didn't overuse it, which was good. But it wasn't Hannah though either. We'll get to that
Yeah, we'll
in a
get to
later
that later.
episode. Yeah, but it's still tied to her, right? Like it's still tied to like the past with her, like her like again, it's all tied to. I mean, really, it's all tied to Bryce's past. Everything revolving around this kid, and because the entire setup from the very beginning is like he disappeared, and later in the very same first episode, if I'm not mistaken, we find out he's dead.
In the second episode of the season,
And
they
we find it
reveal
out
his.
very, very quick, though. Like, we find out he's dead.
Actually, if you are one of those people that watch the trailers for the season, then you
I'm
would
not.
know it. So yeah, they can like the first trailer. I'm not sure if I've seen the second one, which like shows you clip from the season, but the first trailer, which was specifically shot to be a trailer, gave you right off the bat
So you're supposed to
that
know
Bryce
going
is
into
dead.
it that he's dead.
Yeah, like
Okay.
the main hashtag on Twitter regarding this season was "Who killed Bryce Walker?"
Okay. So you're supposed to know going into it. So it's not like that's a major thing that you would have no clue and is some, big twist. So yeah, like I think the big thing is Bryce and his past with Hannah, with Jessica, with all of these kids. Like his
Like
past and
Bryce
how
in general.
yeah, it's his past and how he affected all of them and how he changed a lot of their lives. Mostly for ill, but there is some good in there. And we'll definitely be talking about that more, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I did want to start with talking about Hannah because she was one of the main characters in
Mm-hmm.
the previous two seasons. She was the driving character, and then this season, literally, for lack of a better term, gets rid of her. Like the actress doesn't film any new scenes. We see a few flashback. We hear the tapes for a bit, but it's nothing new with her. She's not returning in any way, shape, or form, and I appreciate this because I think season two got really hung up about the entire Clay still likes Hannah and everything, and I'm glad that after the revelation that he could let go of her, he did in fact let go of her, and she's not returning in any way. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
So now that we talked about Hannah and her role in this season, or lack thereof, if you, I think the main thing we can talk about is Bryce,
Yeah.
because I think this was, you know, going into this, like I said, I saw the one trailer before this, and
Mm-hmm.
and that trailer hooked me on the idea alone that the character, let's not cut around the bush. I think everyone would agree that Bryce is the most hated character in this show. For
Between him or Monty.
um, I think Bryce has a bit more of I think Bryce has a lot more to chew on regarding this
I don't know.
because um you know because let's
We'll
say
get
this.
to Monty though later.
We'll
We'll
get to
definitely
Monty
get to
later.
Monty. But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
would
But
debate you about who's more hated, but I think Monty's definitely up there with Bryce at the
oh
very
no,
least.
don't get me wrong. Monty is an asshole, right? But at the same time, I think when you think about the damage that's been done to Hannah,
Well, to
who do you rank
all of
for?
these kids, not just
All
Hannah.
these kids, yeah. But and also like let's say it like that. I'm saying Hannah because when she listed the tapes, she kind of went from the least to the worst.
Mhm.
So and Bryce was the one
Again, like you can't.
was the,
Hannah's not the focus of this season, so you should focus on all of the other kids. They're the focus here. It's how Bryce has was a part of their lives and how he either helped that or made things way worse.
Yeah, but again, if it's between Monty and Bryce, I said Bryce is
Yeah,
worse.
I'll agree with you. Bryce is probably more hated.
And I think he also has a bigger role. Like when you think about the show, you remember Bryce more than you remember Monty. Like,
True.
so in that sense, killing off Bryce and making the mystery of his murder the main focus was interesting to me because you're expecting like the viewers to be interested in the murder of an asshole,
True.
and I'm putting it lightly. And and that's the thing that throughout this entire season we are getting to know Bryce a lot more. Like we could see what his home life was like. We could see that he was a bit more of a human. You can see that he wasn't loved by his family, and that he comes from his own set of problems. And on the one hand, that's interesting. And I'll
Yeah.
admit there was a part was that I found really touching.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I stop and I think this is the asshole that drove most of it, like out of all of the people on the tapes. I'll argue that he had the biggest role in driving Hannah to suicide because he might have done the worst. Like he's done the worst things to her. He's done a lot he's done a lot of bad things to Clay. All of the people in the school suffered by him in some way, and you can't really accept. You can't really expect me as someone who saw all of those things to say, you know what, I forgive it because look at his past.
Well,
So on the one hand, I understand what they're trying to do, and it's make him more three-dimensional, which works. But at the same time, it's also a bit of a too little, too late.
I think this season, right, puts forth an idea of, you know, when do we stop judging someone based on their past and their past mistakes, right? I think that's what this season's going for. Like, if you can, because it clearly shows throughout the season, like, spoilers, Bryce is trying to change. It shows him as, like, hey, he had a terrible home life, and that's no excuse. And I don't think the show tries to use that as an excuse, but it does do that to show you that he isn't just this terrible asshole rapist. There is more to him, and you can see that through the more you watch every episode and the more you learn about him, you can see that and what he was going through before his death. You can see that he was trying to change, and you can clearly see that he did want to change. He was having trouble with changing, but he did at least want to try. And it asks the question. And again, like, I think this season puts forward the idea of, if someone wants to change, should the world allow them to move on from their past, or should it continue to point at them and say, this is what you did, this is who you are, you can't escape that ever. You can never be anything but that one mistake. And I say this very tentatively because sexual assault and rape within the US, because that's where this is based, is very much, this is an excuse that people will use to let people slide, and have let people slide for a long time, doing some really terrible things, like in real life, that we don't want to ruin this person's life, so we're not going to punish them. Right, like, this is a thing, and this happened in season 2. Like, you can hear the judge tell Bryce that, hey, I don't want to ruin your life, so I'm not going to sentence you to jail or juvie or anything like that. And so he got off. And I'm glad the show did that, because it shows, what it's like for people who do come out and have to say, like, hey, this is a thing that happened to me, and they have to point the finger at someone who probably is, a rich white person or just a rich asshole, and them being able to get by because they're a rich asshole sometimes, right? And so I think it's interesting because this entire season is dedicated to, if someone like that wants to change and is trying to change, should we let them, and should we eventually forgive them, or should we not forgive them, but at least let them try and prove that they can be a better and different person? And that's a hard question, I think, to answer, because we love to sit back and say, like, people should be forgiven for their crimes, they should have a second chance, but the second someone does something really terrible, you don't hear people say that a lot anymore, right? The conversation changes ever so slightly, especially if that person is still alive. The conversation around them will change, and it's an interesting season to put forward, I think. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely interesting at the very least. To me, at least, anyways.
I'll say that, for better or worse, the point of this show, and I'll even argue the original novel it was based on, the original idea was to put, put a topic of conversation out there and actually have people talk about this. Of any age.
Sure.
Yeah, that, any age group, like, before certain reasons why it was ever a thing, like either the show or the book or whatever, I don't think there was, there obviously was, right? But you wouldn't see a lot of media tackle subjects such as suicide, or there was the one or two. There are the one or two, school shows or movies about bullying, but it usually ends up with the bully victim winning in the end.
Yeah.
And this, I think I said previously that this is a show where technically the bully won. And
yeah.
And then, so I think the one thing the show is trying to do, whether you love it or hate it, it does succeed, is put a topic of conversation out there. Like,
yeah.
And with that said, I am happy. Happy might not be the best term to, like, I am appreciative of the idea that we should put this kind of topic into conversation of how much can you redeem someone, because this is something that's been on a lot. Like we're talking about I just talked about how Bryce can be redeemed for everything he's done, but at the same time I'm thinking, I'm a guy watching a TV show from a third point of view. What if I was in this show's universe and like Justin or Monty, I would actually be friends with this guy. Maybe maybe my point of view would have changed then.
Sure.
But at the same time, so I'm appreciative of the idea that it puts forward, and I think this is a discussion that's not only interesting to have but should be had. Then again, I think that everything that Bryce has done in the show, like the way, like knowing everything we know, again, a bit too little, too late in this specific case, because I can't look at this guy and say, you know what, maybe he should have been redeemed because he himself claims he raped like 8 girls.
Yeah,
that's first one very, very, very slight. I could say let him start anew. After the third one, even the second one, I'm saying
that's gonna get you in trouble.
Okay,
I know what
just
you
to
meant,
clarify.
but
okay, and to clarify this to the people, I'm not saying this is a thing that should go unpunished. Not at all. And if I could punish anyone who even sexually abused someone, I would go after that person with a vengeance. What I'm saying is that there is an argument to be made if it was done once if it was done once under some conditions like being drunk or something. There is a teeny tiny bit argument to be made.
You're possibly and potentially digging a hole for yourself here.
Basically,
I get where you're coming from, but you're digging a hole, maybe.
Yeah, I don't. So, for the sake of not digging this hole any longer, I do not. I'm not supportive of anything Bryce has done. If either it was one or more, but the thing is, I appreciate of the idea that it's trying to put forward.
Sure, I agree with that, and I would say that.
And the reason I'm saying, because I know some people have gotten away with something like this and did get a new chance. This is what I'm saying. So
I don't think it's trying to put forward the idea of that someone shouldn't be punished for what they do. I think it very much agrees.
Or forgiven.
Well, I think the show agrees, right? That I think anyone would agree, right? Like anything you do, crime-wise, it should be punished. You should suffer the consequences for that, especially if you're caught. You shouldn't get away with that. I think what it's trying to. Sorry for that loud noise. That's the door on the other side of the wall closing. But it should, at the very least, right? Again, I think it's trying to ask the question of, after that punishment, should, the choices they made and what they did in the past continue to influence their lives for the rest of their lives? Should it continue to reflect on who they are, especially if they've shown that they can or have changed even, right? That they can or are willing or have changed. Like, should that continue to reflect on their lives? Should that continue to be a part of their lives? But I think something else it tries to show as well, though, is that Bryce as a character wanted to have his old life back. He wanted to be able to go back to, like you find out later in the season, skipping around a bit, I suppose, that he wanted to go back to Liberty even after everything he did. He wanted to go back to the same school that he was told he couldn't go back to.
Yeah.
Because he wanted his old life back. He wanted everything to feel like normal. And that's not a thing he can, and maybe that's not a thing he should have anymore. But I think that's what the show puts forward. Like, that's the question it's asking. Like, should that be the case? Should he be allowed to have that normalcy again, or no?
You bring this up because we do see that the reason he wants to go back to Liberty is because everyone in the new school hates him for what he's done, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
So there's also kind of a thing that
he gets bullied.
Now he gets the short end of the stick. The tables have turned and everything. But that also kind of brings up the question that because he does ask if he could go back to Liberty if he improves his grades and his behavior, but then again you could say who's to say he's not going to go back to his old ways if he would have gotten back to Liberty. I guess this is something we'll never know because they killed him off before it could have been done. But that's again discussion. This is something that we could sit here and talk hours about. But
probably we're not a 13 Reasons Why podcast, though.
Yeah, we don't have.
We've already spent like 20 minutes on it, I think.
Well,
just him alone.
Well, what do you expect? But I will ask you this. I'm trying to say so. Again, like I said, appreciate of the idea. Not sure if I necessarily agree with it in this case. And
it's definitely
also
it's interesting. I'm not sure if it's an entirely good or bad thing, but it's definitely an interesting thing to put forward in terms of a season of a show. It's definitely an interesting way to take things, at the very least.
So one last thing to say about Bryce, because this is the main topic of the season: who killed Bryce Walker?
No, 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 no. You
What
can't.
is?
Oh, I thought you were getting ready to say who actually killed him. I said you can't say that yet. I have a thing I want to do for that.
I just want to ask you this: what did you think about the mystery? Did you figure like? Did you figure out who it
Oh,
was?
I was going to ask you, like, did you, knowing who actually did it without revealing that part, did you, and we're definitely skipping around a bit here, but,
Although,
you might as
dude,
well.
but Wolf, this is the spoiler part. We can't say
True.
who it is.
Yeah, yeah, like, it's definitely like 13 Reasons Why is such a continuous story throughout each episode that you're kind of going to get that. So, I was going to ask you, right? Who did you, yeah, as you went through the episodes, who did
That
you think had done it at first?
that's
And then
interesting
I'll tell you mine.
thing to ask because I will say this. I probably mentioned this in the second season too. I watched this season with my mother because I got her into the show,
Oh, you
and
watched season 3 with her as well?
yeah. So,
Cool.
and the reason I bring this up because when I showed her season one, she thought it was a very good show to show parents.
Hmm.
Because everyone says, teachers should watch this, teenagers should watch this. She really dug it from the point of view of a parent,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was very interesting because nobody really brought up that point of view before.
Mm-hmm.
So, so so I watched this with her, and me and her would usually would just throw like throughout the entire
Podcast
season
with
we would.
HC's mom.
No, uh, her English is not as good to be
13 Reasons
a
Why
part of this.
podcast with HC's mom. That'd be
No,
adorable.
no, adorable maybe,
It'd be
but
us just, it'd be me and her just going back and forth about how annoying HC can be at times, yet how we still
oh,
maybe love him.
trust me, she'll have a lot to say about that. But anyway, the thing I want to point out here is that we would throw bets at each other all the time, and like we would watch this one episode, and I could say I could throw a guess on who did it. She could throw a guess on who did it,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, none of us actually figured it out, but I was close. I was close,
Hmm.
uh, but judging by your reaction, I'm assuming you figured it out at one point.
No. Well, here's what I thought. I thought going around through the different episodes at first that they were going to do at first, like within the first like 2, 3, maybe 4 episodes at most. I thought it's probably just going to be a drug deal gone bad thing, and it's just going to be like everyone's going to get upset. We're going to learn all these different stories and interactions that everyone had with Bryce, but no one did it. As it went on a bit further and we started to see more of Bryce himself, I thought this is going to be a suicide thing, isn't it? He's going to have killed himself. And then the more it went on, I'm like, okay, they're going to either pull he committed suicide or. And that was before we found out that he was beaten to death, right? And so I thought, okay, suicide at that point. Then we find out he's beaten to death, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to pull the thing of Monty killed him, right? Like Monty had a reason to kill him, and so Monty's the one who killed him.
Mm-hmm.
So on that second one, I guess I wasn't entirely wrong, but
I
it's
will
not
say
right.
Monty, Monty was a very big guess for us as well.
Like I did
But
not expect it to be the thing I thought it was.
but the thing is
I guess if you
that
want to reveal it, we can now, but go ahead.
basically, again, people who watch this show, the people who care about spoilers have probably seen this the entire season before coming here.
You got to
So
build
with
it up
that
first,
said,
though.
yeah. So with that said, it's Alex. It's Alex is the guy. Alex is the
We,
killer.
we should say
And
that
but
Zach meets Bryce first out on the pier,
yeah,
ends up basically kicking his ass, breaking his leg, possibly
yeah, he
breaking his
broke his
arm,
damn leg.
and just
And
leaving it,
yeah,
and then took his phone and threw it out in the river and just left him there and left. After
yeah,
that, Alex and Jessica show up later. Bryce offers Jessica a tape, and we'll get to that later, I'm sure. And Alex was going to help Bryce and get him somewhere to a hospital, Bryce starts, in pain and angry, starts talking shit about how he's going to ruin Zach, about how he's going to get him. Alex gets upset and pushes him over the end of the pier. And with his leg and arm both broken, Bryce can't swim. That's what
And
happens.
yeah, but so two things
But
about it.
go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. If you have something to continue,
No, I was
continue
going. I was
because
going to say Alex isn't the one who's in the show. The actual accusation goes against Monty, who also dies.
this is something. This is something we'll get to in a bit. But I do want to say, because regarding our guesses, I didn't really guess Alex,
I did not
but
either.
the show kind of tried to push it in the direction that it could either be Taylor or Clay or Justin.
Do you think this is a
And
good twist, a good mystery? Because generally, they always say like good mysteries, good twists. You can pick out if you look back, if you go back and watch the show. And I've not had the chance to do that. And to be honest,
yeah,
I'm
same.
not sure if I will. But they generally tend to say that a good mystery, a good twist, you can always look back through something and say, okay, this hints at it, and this hints at it. Thinking about this show and all the 13 episodes and everything, I don't feel like there was any major hint there that it was Alex and Jessica. Other than maybe, I suppose, like there's definitely some question of Jessica with the bloody cassette tape, right?
Yeah. The thing is that this is what I was about to say. That one of my guesses, my last guess, something like 1 or 2 episodes before the
Which,
finale,
by the
my
way,
guess,
but go ahead.
my final guess, and I guess my mother could testify. My last guess, which I said it has to be that, was Jessica. So I was a teeny tiny bit right about
Yeah.
that, but
If you're on the final episode though, and you're guessing Jessica, I mean, you're definitely on to something at that point. But maybe your guess is a bit too late. You're kind of still wrong technically
I
because
think because there's one episode, was one where I'm not sure if one of the last ones where she's actually talking to her father and say, yeah, don't you remember you tucked me in, and I'm like, I don't know, something is suspicious here. And I think, and the more pieces are, and at one point I just figured that she's the one that would probably want to hurt him the most. And
true.
I don't know, and here's the thing, you said something about a good mystery is that when you go back, you can see hints towards it. And the one thing I will tell you is that I didn't get a chance to look back at the season myself, but I think if I didn't even think about Alex doing it, because I had lots of guesses. I thought maybe Annie, the new character, did it. My mother thought it was her mother, Annie's mother did it. I even thought Bryce's mom did it. But Alex was never a name that was brought up in our guesses. And I think, and I think on the one hand, it's probably kind of brilliant that he's not because we didn't think about it. But at the same time, if there are no hints towards it, it doesn't really make much sense in the grand scheme of things.
The only one I could say I had any kind of suspicion towards all throughout was Jessica. And that's just because they show her holding that tape once or twice well beforehand. Which, by the way, like, hey, we're going to plant evidence on Monty with that tape. Monty never touched that tape, and Jessica had her hands all over that tape, so fingerprints. But anyways, that'll definitely, no cop will ever check that or should ever check that, I suppose. But we should talk about, I suppose, when talking about Bryce's death, you have to talk that, hey, Monty was the one accused for it. And
I have something to say, but
sure.
I do want to say something, regarding, kind of a plot thing, and I'm not sure if it's just me that, again, we have a character like Bryce who we just spent the last 30 minutes of our lives talking about if he
More than
should
that
be
at this
redeemed.
point.
Yeah, yeah, but we just talked about if he should be redeemed, if we like what they did with it, if we like the idea and everything, and who killed them, how the mystery was. And it is kind of disappointing that when you really get down to how he was killed, it essentially it essentially ends up being a bit of an oopsie. And I don't know, it
I
feels
don't know
very
if that
unfair.
was a bit of an oopsie. Like, that was, he intended to push him over the railing. He was angry and he pushed him over the railing. That wasn't an
Yeah, I get it.
accident.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because he did try to like help him up,
He
but then
helped him
they
up,
kind of
but he was angry. Like, Bryce was
yeah
talking shit. Bryce was going to
yeah
go
you
after
can
Zach, his, Alex,
yeah
one of
but
Alex's best friends.
yeah, so there's a point here, but as they were fighting, I felt like he didn't necessarily planned on pushing him off the edge, but more letting him fall back to the ground.
I disagree.
Maybe okay, because that's because I think about my mother me on this as well. So maybe we saw something, or maybe you see something, but I, the way I saw it, it felt like, oh, Bryce Walker is dead, and even though we have someone to call the killer, it is a bit of an oopsie, in my opinion.
I disagree, but
And
I get where you're coming from, but I disagree. Like, he was
okay,
angry. He had every right to be angry with him, and so he pushed him. If it was more of an accident, I think one of them would have dove in to try and save him. Neither of them did. They stood
well,
back and watched him drown
in
and
Jessica's
left.
case, because I think the one thing because Alex does ask her to call someone, didn't he?
I don't think so.
I think he did, and but I also think, but you also think that both of them are probably a bit traumatized by this.
I mean, it's still
Uh,
murder on both of their
yeah,
part. Like, on his part, it's murder. On her part, it's, I think,
she's she's witness.
yeah, well, not just witness. It's, assistant murder, or assisted murder. I think, like, that's what she could be charged with. Like, she was there. She helped cover it up. She assisted in the murder. She can get charged for that. If you were doing actual law, which I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me.
Yeah. Um, Makes sense, but then I think what you have to say, I think you were, I think you were going to say about how Monty was eventually the one
Yeah.
who was claimed to be the killer.
So yeah, the entire season we have narration from Ani, a new character
Yeah,
introduced to the season. We'll probably talk more about her later. We've kind of definitely been skipping around. Sorry for that. If you want something in order, you're not getting it.
yeah.
We're skipping
Well,
around because
what can you
kind
do?
of Bryce's murder is important, I suppose. Very important.
It's the
Kind of,
main plot of the show of the
yeah.
season. So yeah,
But yeah, we
but
get narration from Ani about everything going on, right? And I think I found it interesting right from the very beginning that you hear her speaking and you realize, okay, she's in a police station in one of those, in one of those interrogation rooms, I guess you would call them. I don't know what you call them. Someone can correct me, I'm sure. But she's in one of those rooms. She's talking to someone. You don't know who. Because for most of the story she's telling, right, sh- that person is silent until you get to the later episodes. You finally hear a voice, and then when you get to the final episode, you finally understand who exactly it is that she's talking to.
and that's Alex's father.
Yeah, Alex's dad. And she goes on and on about, hey, this is who could done it. This is everything that's happened. This is everything that's going on in all these kids' lives, right? And she tells him everything. Like, they have enough information on some of the kids that they could pull them in for completely different crimes if they wanted to at this point.
Yeah.
And so, she tells him all of this, and eventually they get to the point of, hey, it's Monty. But what the show. And you learn very quickly, right, that Ani isn't a trustworthy or reliable narrator. She does
Yeah.
lie. She's even lying to him as she talks to him about certain things, right? And you can
Yes.
tell this because the show will show you one thing that's happening when she said something entirely different. Like she says, I never had a relationship with Bryce, when she absolutely did. I don't know if
Yeah.
like that's supposed to be her like saying I said this and then correcting it to him. I don't know if that's actually a correction that she makes, but again, you can tell that she's not a reliable narrator, so you never know 100% if you can trust her or not throughout the show.
Yeah.
And then eventually at the final episode you get to it was Monty who did it. And Alex's dad already has suspicions that it was his son, that his son was the one who killed Bryce. And you
Yeah.
hear her talk about Monty in a way that maybe
And he also
Monty,
destroy and he also destroys evidence at the end of the season,
yeah.
which makes which he did figure it out. So
Well, I mean, he knew in the station that it was his son because the way Ani describes it, like it's very much maybe Monty was upset with, Bryce with for all the past things that he had done to to his friends and stuff like that. She says things like that that makes you think, okay, she's definitely talking about
as much
Alex,
as much
not
as much as
necessarily
Annie,
Monty.
looking back, as much as Annie said that she has like the perfect thing to say that would sell the police on the idea that it's Monty, I think she kind of forgot how much Alex cares about Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
because I think
Well,
when
no,
she meant
she knew who killed Bryce. She knew it
yeah,
was
but
Alex and Jessica. They all the
yeah,
kids knew who it was by the
yeah, all the
end.
kid, yeah, all the kids knew it. But what I'm saying that when she is in the interrogation room and she's saying it to Alex's father, I think some of the stuff she said did send some hints to Alex's father that
Well,
like,
that's what she was doing.
wait,
She was
what?
doing it on purpose because again, like I said, I think Alex's dad knew in the station that it was his son. That he was questioning his own son. He was not 100% certain maybe, but he was definitely suspicious of his own son. Like you can see that, that by the end of the episode in that station before he even leaves it, that he's suspicious of his own son and he realizes it because they even show him crying. Like he realizes, and he even says like in the station, justice has to be done. And Ani's response is, you know, let the dead bury the dead. Like he even says like, hey, you didn't know this. There's no way you could have known this, but before you came down here, Monty died in prison because Monty was also arrested for another crime, but Monty died in prison. He was
Yeah.
killed earlier that day. No one knew about it. And he tells her this, and he says, and he even tells her that, Monty was still a human being. He still deserves the truth, and he
Yes.
deserves justice, even if he's dead. And Ani's response is, Bryce hurt everyone a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
if you do this, he would still be hurting everyone quite a lot. So let the dead bury the dead, right? That is
That's
her
the name of the
response.
episode as well.
Yeah,
That's
this is true
uh,
also.
but so let me ask you this: what do you think about the idea that they essentially lied, to get Alex on?
I thought that was unexpected. When I said, hey, I bet it's Monty or I bet it's possibly suicide, to be honest, I'm not sure if it's better that it would have been suicide or worse. I'm not sure if this was better than the idea that Bryce committed suicide or worse than the idea that Bryce could have committed suicide. I honestly don't know. I don't know if that's a
And
good thing or a bad thing.
so here's what I
I'm
think.
Go ahead.
Here's what I think, because again, I didn't see it coming that it was Alex necessarily. And I do like how they this is something that I do like as evolution from character growth from the previous season, that all of these guys are a team now and they stick
Mm-hmm.
together throughout everything that has something to do with Anna. And then and then so I like the idea that they all stuck together and to help Alex with this. Especially, this is now debatable because you didn't say it like this, but if it was planned to be a mistake, if Alex pushing Bryce off the edge was a mistake, then I do like how they try to make sure he won't,
Suffer
his
from
life
it.
won't be ruined. Yeah,
But
his
then
life won't.
that
but
brings up the
the,
question of, should, yeah, and that kind of brings up the question,
and
like, should
hold on,
Bryce's life be ruined by, and that excuse and everything
yeah,
like that, like,
yeah. But here's what I'm saying. This is not about whether Bryce's life should be like that or something.
mm-hmm,
This is something that because at first I thought it was really clever.
mm-hmm,
Then after we let the season sit for a bit, my mother actually brought up a very interesting point.
mm-hmm,
That it's not necessarily a narrative point, but for a show that really encourages talking about this kind of stuff and say be honest with your
mm-hmm.
parents and your teachers and everything, isn't it a bit you know isn't it a bit odd that this season ends with a cop destroying evidence and essentially getting out of it by lying?
Mm-hmm. I don't. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Your mom is too smart. She really should be on this show. Because I
Well,
did not think about that. But that is a
yeah,
really good point.
it's something that didn't really cross my mind. But when she said it, it was like, yeah, that's a problem.
But that is,
That's kind
I
of
think that's a problem that plagues all three seasons of this show, right? Where it is a show that, hey, you should talk, but consistently, no one in the show talks. We have moments of where
I would
people
say.
finally open up, but they only open up after trying to do things on their own and after major trauma.
Well, because honestly, and I think this is why this show exists and tries to tell it, because they represent it as it is. People just try to
Oh,
live on with it, and
they represent
instead
the,
of talking.
in my opinion, over dramatized version of how it is, but sure.
Well, obviously, because
But yeah,
going,
drama show. Yeah,
so, but and whether it's a good or bad thing, up for debate. But at the
sure.
same time, I can for the first season, when you say why doesn't Jessica talk or something, the second one, it's also
No,
something
no,
that
that
people
one
brought
I
up.
get.
I
That
can,
one I understand.
yeah, but and also I can see, like, maybe with Clay or Alex, like, why wouldn't they talk? Because some kids in real life don't talk about this stuff.
This is true.
And I think that's what the show comes to tell you, that you should talk. You should
I
because
don't
you.
know if the show ever
But
puts that idea forward, though. I guess in a way it does by trying to show you, like, hey, this is how shit can go so terribly wrong, so terribly fast if you don't talk. But there's so many times throughout all three seasons I feel that it shows someone who does talk or someone who doesn't talk and things still kind of work out. Like this example with Alex's dad as a police officer lying, right? And covering and destroying evidence to basically keep his son from ever being accused. Mostly, considering the
yeah,
ending of this season
and
as well. But
kind of jumping over to a different show for just a second, because I
sure.
did talk about this. I talked about this with a friend, that it kind of reminds me of the season 3 finale of Veronica Mars. To those who haven't watched the season,
Hi.
there, yeah, to those who didn't watch Veronica Mars, just to quickly go over it, there's a point where I'm not going to mention characters' names or anything, but those who watch the show will know what I'm talking about. But
Okay.
a parent does destroy evidence of their kid doing something bad
Sure.
that could get them in jail.
Sure.
So it's
And
so it's
that's a
like
thing. I'm sure.
yeah, but
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. So I think, but the thing is that I said, you know what? As much as I don't like season 3 of Veronica Mars, like, I don't hate it as much as other fans do. But this is the part that never really bothered me there. And I'm like, why when I think about it in Veronica Mars it doesn't bother me, but in this specific case it is. And I think, again, what it bothers me here is that when a show comes and tells you you know, rather if you think it puts it out well or not, the first episode of this season starts with the entire main cast telling you, talk it out, seek
Mm-hmm.
help, do this, and then it ends with all of them solving their problems by line. Now, with Veronica Mars, however, it's
Well, it doesn't
it's never
end with
about
all
the
of them
line.
solving their problems about line, though.
Yeah, true, but the main conflict
True,
is
sure. The main conflict is solved with a lie.
the main conflict is solved with a lie. A police officer destroys evidence uh, when you should trust these people. So I think the reason why I didn't really find it so bothersome in Veronica Mars
Maybe,
specifically is because one, it helps the mystery, and two, the parent gets punished for it. So that's there's that.
as someone who lives in the U.S., where this is, supposed to be based, anyways, the
Yeah.
police officer you should trust thing is an interesting comment to make, considering current
Well,
climate within the U.S., right? Like,
yeah. Well,
maybe
I
that is a statement in and of itself, right? From the show. That maybe that is a statement
that's
they want to make.
yeah. That and that's another thing that U.S. I'll even argue that whether that from I won't necessarily trust a police officer. Like I would
Hmm.
parents. I would trust some other authority. Police, though, you know, police have done some terrible stuff to some people,
True.
and so
Absolutely true. It's definitely it's an interesting way to end things, but it definitely, I guess, raises questions, right? It's
and
hard. It's
actually,
honestly hard for me to say where I fall on that now, having brought up that idea.
but I will say this though, that on the same day this season premiered, they announced that there was going to be a fourth season, which would be the last one.
Damn it!
Yeah, I was just about to say. I think I heard.
That was a
Russian
cup
is
get. That was a cup. That was a cup getting sit down. But damn it!
okay. But they do say that season 4 is going to be the
Because I
last
was going to.
season.
You know what? We've already been talking
Yeah.
about the ending, so let's kind of let's kind of finish out with the ending, and then we'll kind of go back a bit, because there's definitely some
Yeah.
moments I want to mention. I'm sure you do too. The ending ends with everyone in the coffee house and them revealing that Tyler has this entire wall of photos he's taken of everyone, and they're very beautiful photos of everyone kind of really happy and enjoying that moment within their lives, stuff like that. And they're all kind of having fun and partying a bit, stuff like that as well. And you see this scene, and then you go to another scene where you see the guns that Tony and Clay hid of Tyler's are found in the river. Someone
Yeah.
drags them out of the river, they're found. And then after that we see excuse me, we see Ani walk out of the coffee house to meet, I guess you would call him
Monty's boyfriend.
Monty's boyfriend. Yeah, someone, at least Monty was in a relationship, quote unquote relationship. He was definitely
Let's call it.
he was having
Let's
sex
call.
with. He was
Yeah.
having sex
Let's
with.
call.
He
Let's
was
call him
having
his
sex with this
boyfriend
guy.
for the sake of convenience. He's his boyfriend.
Sure.
There you go.
And he asks Ani, like, what did you say? Like, Monty didn't kill Bryce. He doesn't say where Monty was or what Monty was doing or who, and you already know by this point, like,
Yeah,
who
but
he is to
we
Monty,
know it.
and
Yeah,
you
we
know
know
that
it.
they had a relationship together, but you don't know, right? Like, you don't know what he's going to do. He doesn't say anything. He just says, what did you say? That wasn't Monty. Monty didn't do that. You lied. And he just walks off. And that's it.
Yeah. So with that
Gonna
said,
say,
I think that's like their way to set up the next
that's
season.
a way to set up the next season. I don't think they should have.
I think, but this is something I do want to say that about the entire idea. Should this end up with a lie? What if in the fourth season? This is going to come back.
I will say, I'm glad they did that, right? I'm glad they showed the guy who was with Monty come out and call Ani out. like, and say, like, you lied. I don't know how you lied. I don't know why you lied, but you lied. Right? Like,
Yeah.
he knows, like, I'm glad they showed that bit. I wish they hadn't have shown the guns part. I think that's just more drama for the sake of drama in a drama show, to be honest. I wish they
Yeah.
would have ended on, genuinely, I think if they ended season 3 on everyone's happy in the coffee house, Ani
Yeah,
goes
that would have been.
outside to, confront Monty's boyfriend and all of that, and then we go back to the coffee house and saying, and hearing Jessica, Justin, and Clay talk about how life isn't easy, but we deserve this moment of happiness right here, right now. Like, we've been through so much shit together. Let's just enjoy this. That
Yeah.
would have been a good ending, and that would have been a good place to just completely end 13 Reasons Why. Whatever happens after
Agreed.
that doesn't matter. That's up for
Yeah.
the audience to figure out and think about. The point is like, this is the end of seeing these kids go through terrible shit.
Agreed. Agreed. But and this is something that's actually interesting that uh, they didn't know that they're getting a season 3 when 2 aired. We only found that out a few
Okay.
days after. But they did say that season 4 is coming the same day season 3 premiered. And
So I
looking
guess
at
they
the
know.
ending,
Yeah, they
but
definitely do.
looking at the endings to both seasons, it's kind of weird that this season, which ended with "we're not sure if we're coming back," ends on such a big cliffhanger, and the season, which is like, "Oh, we definitely coming back," has like a pretty definitive ending. To be happy.
Hello?
Oh, you can still hear me?
Yeah, you cut out there for just a second.
So I just said it's weird that when they weren't sure if they were coming back, we got a pretty big cliffhanger, and now that they knew for sure they're coming back, the ending was pretty definitive. Like,
Okay.
you can be happy with how it ended.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an odd one, I would say. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what they come back for a season 4.
and
I
seeing
wish they
how,
wouldn't. Like, I think this
but
would have been a
it
perfect
it is.
end if you alter
I
it
know,
somewhat.
I know, but we can't do anything against it.
But I
There
am,
is going to be another season.
but I am
But I,
honestly interested after
yeah,
this season.
I'm, not only after this season, but I'm also interested in the fact that they confirmed right off the bat the next one is going to be the final one. So, like,
Yeah.
what can they do with it?
Yeah.
Well, so we talked about Bryce and all the mystery and stuff. So
And the ending.
and the
And now
ending.
we're
So
going
let's
back.
yeah.
We're
So
definitely.
let's go back. Let's go back a bit because I think there is one topic of conversation that we need to bring up regarding this season, and that's
Oh
Ani.
dear. Oh, Ani, okay. Not who I thought it was going to be yet. I'll get to
Okay.
that person then.
Okay, but I do want to bring up Ani because
You're not going to
she's
get out of
the
talking about that one. But
yeah,
go ahead.
I know. I do want to bring Ani up first because she's the big addition to the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
like, you know how season 2 didn't have this much, if I recall, but Ani is basically the Hannah of this season because you know how Hannah basically commentated the first season through the tapes. Yeah, and then Annie's pretty much, Annie's interrogation, where she tells the entire story, which eventually ends with her saying Monty killed Bryce. This is our narration this season, and as a narrator, I liked her. She has an interesting voice to to carry this forward. With that said, I didn't like her character much. And I will have to explain why because Wolf muted his mic and abandoned me for a second. But then, so what I think, so at first I didn't really mind Annie. I was, it is interesting that for a show that deals with all kinds of people from gay people to subject of the sexual abuse, to people who commit suicide. And we do kind of get this with Tony, but it is nice to see, people who migrated to the U.S. and they're trying to make a living. So seeing
I
her
mean, we
from
even
this,
see a thing brought up of, "Hey, I'm back. I didn't leave
yeah,
at all. What are you talking about?" We also see a thing of Tony's family is shipped away because of ICE.
hmm
Like they take his
yeah,
family and send them all, and ship them all out. Ship them all out of the country
that
back to
that was
wherever. And
sad. That was
yeah,
sad. If you brought it up, that was really sad
yeah. But I
because
mean,
Tony is still one of my favorite characters.
yeah, absolutely agree with that one. And Tony and Clay's relationship is also one of my favorites. Though Justin and Clay's relationship has definitely shot up there this season. But
But
that's
back to
for
Annie.
but
Back
back
to
to Annie.
Annie.
I'll talk
Yeah,
about the ice thing with Tony a little bit later. Then fine.
but with back to Annie. So I do like her backstory. I do like her connection,
Mm-hmm.
like how her connection to Bryce started. And I do like how she, her kind of relationships with the other people.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, the at one point I just did a big 180 on this character.
Hmm.
Big, like, I liked her at first. She was fine. She was enjoyable. But then when it comes to the entire, because again, like we said, that the main solution here is lying. This is her main solution in general, because Clay asks her, "Did you have, do you have any connection with Bryce?" And it's like, "No, I'm just living in the same house with him because my mother works there." But then she has sex with him multiple times, and she keeps it away from everyone. She becomes friends with Jessica, and she knows Bryce raped her, and she still goes along with it. Her mother
Well,
tells
she
her,
didn't
"Do
at
not do this."
first. No.
Yeah, at first no, but what does at first mean when she did it anyway?
Well, again, like you can't blame someone for like saying for sleeping. You can't blame her for that when she had no clue who Bryce was to Jessica and who Jessica was to Bryce at that point. She was new to the entire town, to the entire area. She wasn't from there
Yeah,
originally.
but
When
when
she did learn, though, she still had a relationship with him, right?
yeah, the thing is, I think I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure about this, but I got it that ever since the first time she slept with him, that she knew about she at least knew about his reputation
I don't
in that school.
think she did. She knew Jessica had been raped, but she wasn't sure exactly by who or anything like that. But she did find out later. She at least knew that because of Clay that Bryce was a rapist, that he was dangerous, right? That he had done something at the very least. She just didn't know exactly what.
Mm-hmm.
And she even knew from Bryce's own mom as well that Bryce wasn't a good person. Like essentially, she knew from everyone that Bryce wasn't a good person,
Yep,
and she
but
still chose to sleep with him. You can,
mhm.
and I mean that kind of goes back to kids make poor decisions
but
sometimes. Everyone
yeah,
does.
it can go back to that, but then it also comes down to the fact that it's I think it was obvious from pretty much the start that she's the new girl for Clay now that Hannah is really out of the picture.
Yeah.
Right. And that she was the new girl for him, and they do go in that direction because they do times see that Clay has some sort of interest in her. You can even tell that she has some interest in him. But then again, she's put that kid through so much shit that at the end, when they say, "Oh, well," when she introduces him to her mother as her boyfriend, I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, honestly, I thought they were a couple at first, but then I get to the ending and it's like, oh, like I just know that she is going to play going forward, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is how you view relationships. But I think the number one key to making a relationship work is trust. And I don't think Clay can trust her, and I think Clay no, excuse me, I think Clay knows that he can't trust her.
I I disagree. I think based on the ending, he thinks he can trust her, right? Because I mean, she did lie to the police for him again, and she did convince a police officer to lie for him as well. Whether or not that's a good thing or not is up for debate, right?
Yeah, but again, that's one in favor times, yeah, that she did hurt him
I mean, she
and
did
kind of
eventually tell him the truth, though.
and,
And I mean, she
yeah,
also
but
did make it clear that she wasn't interested in him at first the same way he was in her.
then why did she kiss him?
Again, she said in the show that that was an accident the first time and that I'm not interested in you in that way. And over time, I would guess that that did change, right? Like that did change between the two of them. She did become interested. But that first kiss was an accident. She did say so. She did say that I don't see you in that way. So she
But
didn't, I wouldn't say she led him on, but she
so
definitely, maybe
so
not the best influence for Clay,
I,
right?
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this much. As someone who was a teen in high school, I can tell you no such accidents happen. At
Apparently
least
I
in my
wasn't.
case.
Apparently I've just always been an old man.
Okay. Well, weren't you? Or are you lying to me now?
Who knows? Ooh.
Well, basically, I don't know. It feels, if it was an accident, then I'm not sure she would have been the initiator. But
Sure.
maybe that's how I see it. I don't
I
know.
get you.
But either way, I'm not. Not the worst, but not the best.
Yeah.
But going forward, she could redeem herself. So who knows?
Sure.
With that said, I think you want to say about Tony. So let's go. So let's do
I
this.
was going to point out that yeah, Tony, his family is shipped off by ice. A thing that has probably become a lot more prevalent in current times, right? With what's happening with blah 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 with what's happening in the U.S. I'll get the English out one way or another eventually. The words, but
The
yeah, like
words.
I think that is. I found that one interesting. I didn't expect that one at all. It surprised me, and I'm not sure. It in a way at first when I first saw it, it's like this feels a bit forced maybe, but then it started to feel like no, this feels like it was planned, well in advance of what's been currently going on and all of that. But it also feels like you know, I'm glad they showed it. Right? It's one thing to being in the U.S. It's one thing to hear about this, and even if the show doesn't show it completely right, even if the show doesn't get it 100% right as far as how things happen, right? It's
And for
still
all intents and purposes, they do pull this off screen.
yeah, right. That is true. Like all we see is Tony finding out that his family's gone and and just coming home to his house to see that no one is in his house, that his entire family is just gone, and he has no clue where they're at. I think that was a powerful moment. That was a powerful thing to see because it's one thing to hear about this happening to people, it's another thing to see it happening to people. It's another thing to see, and it's you have to remember that Tony is still in high school. He is an 18-year-old. It's a powerful thing to see, you know, someone who's in high school come home to find their entire family just gone.
Yeah.
They're not there. You have no clue where they're at, and you have to try and figure that part out as a teenager. That was, in my opinion, that's one of these things that I think the show did really well, and I think I have to congratulate them for, because it's one thing to hear about it in the news in the country you live in and to hear all of these different stories coming out about what's going on surrounding immigrants to the U.S. from South America and from other places as well, and hear these stories and read about them, and an entirely different thing to see it. Even if it's not shown completely well, even if you might disagree with how it's shown, it still has an impact and it still has a power to it that's very different from the written word. scenes, we are, as a species, humans are very much a visual. We do very much, words hold power, but the visual prowess of something, being able to see something, is much, much different, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to congratulate the show for that. But that's
Mhm.
not the only thing I have to congratulate the show for.
Okay.
Because going into, I think it was episode, let me look, maybe two. I'm thinking two. Like, it's definitely around.
If you are talking about thing
I'm talking about
right
Chloe.
after,
I'm talking about
yeah.
Chloe. And
So this was the two. I
okay,
think
yeah.
this was the second one.
So this happens early on as well, and it's kind of a small side plot thing. But again, I'm glad they showed it. And that is, Chloe's pregnant with Bryce's kid. She doesn't tell Bryce until very close to the end. And, she gets an abortion.
Hmm.
And we have to see her kind of figure that out, and and go through having to figure that out and everything. And we see her go to a place that tells her, hey, we're here to help you. And she goes to a place that she thinks helps with abortions by herself, and instead they kind of, say, hey, we don't help with abortions, we actually help you figure out how you want to keep the kid. And they make her go through that. And then she, talked with Zach about it, and he helps her out through everything, and eventually she goes to an abortion clinic. And they show her at the abortion clinic walking past people who are there, kind of, to basically tell her, hey, don't do this, you're killing a life and all of that, with what you have to deal with in the U.S. now. What I didn't expect was they have a woman come across to help her, say, hey, let's get you past the crazy
Yeah.
people.
And then
And
she ends up being a part of them.
yeah, this woman completely ambushes her. Like, she's even wearing a vest that says, abortion clinic patrol people. Like, hey, we're here to help you get to the abortion clinic past these people so they don't bother you. And, like, she absolutely, like, it's a complete and total lie. And she absolutely ambushes her and says, hey, you're killing a life. And, and starts preaching at her as well. And,
Hmm.
that too, I think, was a powerful moment. And the way they
Yep.
showed that. Like, I think that was, whether it's done well, whether it's, completely 100% exactly what happens, it's at the very least, it's a powerful thing to see. Because it's one thing to read about this, it's one thing to hear about it in the news, it's an entirely different thing to see it, right? And to kind of play witness to that in a way.
Yeah, agreed.
So again, I have to congratulate this season of the show. That was well done. And I think, it's moments like that, like they have a few things like that pop up where this was so well done that it definitely makes this season a lot better.
Hmm.
Another moment like this is Bryce listens to the tapes, to Hannah's tapes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great moment. And
Mm-hmm.
interesting fact. I think that on the hill where Tony takes a rest to listen to the tapes, I think that's the same hill where
I think it is. I thought it
Clay,
was too.
yeah, that where Clay finished listening to the tape
Mm-hmm.
in season one. That I thought it was a nice well.
Yeah, it was a nice little. Yep, yeah, I agree with that. I thought it was too, and I think that's a nice little parallel. But yeah, Bryce listens to the tapes this season, and you can see the effect they have on him. They even get him to make his own tape, which,
Mm-hmm.
by the by, talking about the ending for a season, I think it would have also been really powerful to, because you get to hear the tape Bryce made at the end of the season. At the end of the final episode, you get to hear the tape Bryce made. Everyone's kind of standing around, at Clay and Justin's, outhouse home. Like, Clay's parents make
Yeah.
him, like, they redo their, like, storage shed and turn it into a place where Clay and Justin can kind of live on their own a little bit,
Yeah, and
which is a neat little, which is a nice little
yeah,
thing.
yeah, and that's actually a thing I want to put on. Hold on a second.
Well, give me 1 second to finish up what I was going to say. Like, you hear everyone kind of standing around in their place, listening to Bryce's tape, listening to a copy of Bryce's tape that Jess and Jessica and Alex had made, and you hear them listening to that, and I think that also would have been a good place to end this season.
Hmm.
I think that would have worked really well as well. Like that would have been a great end to 13 Reasons Why also. Like this is where they end all of it at, where they all standing around listening to Bryce's tape.
Mhm.
The future
Uh,
is still, like they leave the future of, what all happens and where everything goes completely up to uncertainty. Like that's up to the audience to decide. But you end hearing Bryce's tape where, he talks about being sorry. He talks about wanting to change and trying to change. And he's, confesses to raping not just Jessica, not just Hannah, but multiple other girls as well, right?
yeah.
Like I think, that
Um,
too was was a strong moment.
mhm. And on that note, though, if I can just nothing to do with anything, but it just I just sighed in my eyes every time we saw
Is it the
Clay
Deadpool 2?
Anderson's
Is it
role.
the
Yes,
Deadpool 2
yes,
poster? Yes, I saw that
yes.
too.
This stuck out
It
so
stuck out
much
really
every time.
badly.
Yeah, I'm like,
Deadpool 2 must
wait,
really need that advertising money now.
yeah, and I'm like, wait, why do they have a Deadpool 2 poster in the room? Like, I'm not complaining. Deadpool 2 is a great movie,
Yeah, yeah.
but
It felt
but
weird.
it's so, but it's so like. You know, really, you want to advertise Deadpool and you're doing this in 13 Reasons Why of all shows?
Yeah.
It,
It felt weird. It kind of took me out of the moment, right? Like, yeah, I get this is set in the real world and kind of current times, but it still kind of took me out every time I saw it. I'm like, there's that poster again. What were we going on about again? Where are we at now? Because I was totally paying attention to the poster and not the scene or
yeah.
the characters because it kind of just it took me out of it. I don't know why it took me out of it, but it just felt off. It felt weird. Like this shouldn't be there. I don't know why it shouldn't be there. It just feels like it shouldn't be there. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It just feels
But then
off.
again, it does remind me of the super duper cut of Deadpool 2, and I still need to watch it all the way through.
I
like
guess. I guess it
I
worked
did
for
watch it.
advertising. I guess it worked for advertising, and it served its purpose.
Like, just to clarify, I did see the movie in theaters. I just didn't see that
Go
extended
watch
cut.
Deadpool 2
So
again.
yeah,
The
it's a great
advertising
movie.
worked, I guess.
Yeah, but anyway, I just had to bring this up because
Mm-hmm.
wow, that felt kind of out of place.
So, in our jumping around,
Um,
what's next?
what's next? Okay, you know something? I recall saying you didn't like Clay in season 2. What do you think about him in this season?
I liked him. I still find that goofy ass fucking confused and hurt face annoying as fuck because they show it so damn much. Like,
You know,
this kid
this is
has like
really
3 emotions: angry, confused and hurt
and
face, angry again, and then confused and hurt face again. And it's like, yeah, there's a smile or two you get here and there as well. I should give him that. You do get a smile or two. That's nice. Great that you can
okay.
smile. But God, I hate seeing that confused and hurt face on him all the time. Like, give this kid something else, please. He seems like a decent actor. He seems like he can do this. I'm just tired of seeing the damn confused and hurt face every scene almost.
You know something? I think this is not saying that it is, but you know, this is season 3, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like starting with season 2 because again, because I think we brought this up. This is based on the book, and the book doesn't go through everything in season 2 onwards. Like the
Yeah,
book ends where the first season ends,
yeah. The book is
and
only yeah.
so I think
Do you
I'm not
know?
sure.
Going to interrupt you just briefly. Do you know if the author had any input on season 2 or season 3 for that matter?
I know he had some input on season 2, but you know, you tell me if he had anything on season 3. I think he did because you know they still bring up his name in the credits, but you know that's just the general. He wrote the book. We kind of have to.
Yeah. Okay.
But you know, with that being said, so I think not sure about this, and you know, there are cases of it in shows, but do you think Clay's character is just a bit flanderized by this point?
Flanderized. I'm trying to remember. What does flanderized mean again?
that they just basically stick to the one emotion, to the one thing people know about him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this,
And exaggerating it more and more over time until it completely consumes the character. Most always, the trait slash becomes completely outlandish and becomes their defining characteristic. I don't think it
yes,
becomes outlandish, but it does feel like Clay spends the majority of the season learning that this person lied to him, of this season, anyways. I guess you could say he spends all of season one doing this as well, and all of season two doing this as well. Also, I guess you could all of 13 Reasons Why is just Clay finding out this person lied to me, 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 this person lied to me. Everyone lies to him all the damn time. Fair, I guess everyone lies anyways, right? But like every time it's like you see him, like he finds out a little piece of information from someone or something else, or he has this something doesn't seem right face, right? And it's like, and so he goes to confront someone. He finds out, you lied to me. Here's my confused and hurt face again. Explain. Help me understand why you lied to me. Confused and hurt face. Then he here's why, and he's like, okay, now it's no longer confused and hurt face. It's the kind of confused and hurt face, but also the kind of understanding face. Like, I get why you lied to me now. Moving on. Oh, this person also lied to me, confused and hurt face. Why did you lie to me, confused and hurt face? And I mean, it does get
but
old after a while.
yeah. So I'm not sure which Flanders is the right word, but it just feels like that this was his main thing.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is
because this was his main thing in one. And now it's like, okay, we need to expand this. What could we do?
I will say, right, is everyone in this damn world is just a complete and total idiot? Because I swear, you have all of these kids in front of many different cops and adults kind of give these sideways glances if like a perfect scene, right? You have Justin and Clay in front of Clay's parent, in front of Clay and Justin's parents. I guess you would say Justin's parents now because they are adopting him. But you have them in front of the parents, right?
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. They do make kind of a big deal out of this entire adoption.
Yeah.
That they bring a social worker in and stuff. This doesn't come back, and
Well, I don't think it needs to. I think it's just a side thing for drama,
Yeah, but then again, there is a point where police actually comes in with a search warrant on Clay, and it's like, wouldn't it hurt? Wouldn't it like damage the process?
They do say that, but they say they actually do address that. They address it by Clay's mom telling Clay that they're not going to come in and say or do anything in regards to the adoption and the social worker and all of that until they have a more definitive idea of where Clay's case and the accusations against him are going to lead. Like she says that if Clay goes to court and he actually is accused and all of that, then they'll probably come forward and say something. Then they'll probably come forward and do something about the adoption, stuff like that. Until then, they're going to hold off and see where things go. That's what she tells him. So they do kind of address it, I would say.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said,
I was going to say it really bothers me that when, like, I was going to talk about how, you can see Clay and Justin are hiding something, and Clay kind of takes this sidelong glance at Justin, like, like, we're lying, wink, wink, but they're not actually winking. It's just this really obvious, like, you're lying, and the fact that Clay's parents just don't pick up on that bother me. It's like, you do know they're both lying to you, right? You do get that, or do you just not get that? Because it's not clear if you understand if they're lying to you or not. It's really not clear if these cops understand when these kids are lying to them. Because it's like, I'm going to look down at the ground or over here because I'm lying right now, and you don't know that I'm lying, but I'm definitely lying. I'm being really obvious that I'm lying, but it bothers me so damn much because it happens so often. Like, you can see multiple kids.
Well, again.
And maybe it's for the drama, maybe it's for the show, but it bothers me because people in real life aren't this stupid. If they see someone kind of looking down at the ground when they're giving them a story, you're going to know, like, it seems like you're feeding me a line of bullshit, and you're going to call that person out on feeding you that line of bullshit if they're acting like that. right? I mean, I would if I saw that and noticed it, and I like to think I'm at least a little bit observant. I'm probably not, but I like to think that I am. And like this show makes
Yeah.
people look like they are completely oblivious to anything until someone tells them, I lied to you. And then they have the shock and hurt face and the confused and hurt face. And it's like, why did you lie? It's like, how did you not realize they lied in the first place for how daggum obvious they were being?
Yeah, basically.
That bothered me a bit. That's one of the things I dislike about this show that, in my opinion, has continued to be a thing throughout all 3 seasons. But anyways, that's just random nitpick from Wolf.
Okay.
I
I'm
gotta
trying to
find
think if
something
there's.
to rant about this daggum show because, darn it, I actually liked it, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
Well, I guess I managed to get you to like something,
And I
and
hate you for it
hopefully,
all the more.
mhm. Hopefully you won't hate me when I keep going. But I'm
We'll
trying to
see.
think.
Come back.
I'm
HC,
trying.
the season 4 was terrible. I hate HC now. End of the show. We're done. We're never recording ever again. That's a
Well,
joke.
mhm. Found the episode to joke out.
I
but but
told you the
anyway,
humor is going to
well,
be hard. I got to get it in where I can, HC.
yeah, fair point, fair point. So I think one character I want to bring up is Tyler. I like what they did with
Mm.
Tyler in this season.
Mm-hmm. It was it was definitely interesting, right? Like it's hard, right? And I was going to actually bring this up. It's hard, right? To I think for me, I think one of the reasons why I like this more, why I like this season more than the other two was I think I liked it more because I wasn't able to connect with what was going on as well.
Mhm.
Maybe this is I'm too old to get it anymore. That I'm so old now that I don't get what the kids, what the youngins are doing nowadays and what they're
How you
going through
do,
and dealing
fellow
with.
kids?
Yeah, how do you do, fellow kids? That's me now. I'm that old now. But I think because I felt so disconnected from having to deal with a friend who, potentially, who was going to shoot up a school and you talk them down from that and having to deal with kind of guiding that friend back through and helping them try to get better, stuff like that, and having to deal with being accused of murder and having to deal with having all of these friends who've lied about some serious shit that they've done. Like, it just felt to me like this season felt like I was completely disconnected from what was going on. Like, I had no connection to it. I had very little connection to it at the very least, right? Like, everything felt like these aren't things I've dealt with. These aren't things that I really could ever deal with in many ways. So I felt so disconnected. And because of that, I felt like there was less I could judge. Like there was less that I could criticize in terms of this feels off. This feels like it was done poorly. Like the first two seasons, like and the fact that they deal with suicide and especially depression, right? Like that's more a thing that I think everyone can connect to, at least in some way personally, either through personal experience or through having known someone who's dealt with at least depression, right? And what that can put people through and what that can send them through. So you can connect to that more and you can see where the show falls in that regard more often because you have more of that personal connection to it. This season, I found that personally, I found that harder to do because I didn't have that more personal connection to it. I didn't have either that personal experience or that experience of seeing friends or people I know deal with this and how they got through it or didn't get through it, maybe.
Like I identify. There's the scene where he actually talked to Clay about it.
Mm-hmm.
I identified with it through Clay's perspective because you, I was, and I guess you could say I still am the, kind of the emotional punching bag for a lot of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when someone, thankfully, I didn't have to hear something as terrible as this.
You were the
And,
person they kind of unloaded everything onto, right? Like you were the person they came
yeah,
to and told everything. Yeah, I get that.
yeah, I was the listener.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, I never heard anyone tell me something as terrible as this, and thank God
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't. But but at the same time, I do think having listened to people throughout various emotional states,
Mm-hmm.
I I get this felt very real, and how Clay kind of takes responsibility for him and checks up on him and everything.
Yeah.
It felt very real, like to the point Clay even came back to the school to encourage Taylor to speak up.
Yeah.
You know that scene was,
Like, I
if I
mean,
have to say a highlight season, this would be my highlight.
yeah. I mean, that was a great scene because it's like, it kind of, that was something I liked about Clay's character. Like, they kind of showed really well this season how loyal Clay is to a fault, even, right? Like, when he knows it could get him, when he knows that, if he goes back, he'll probably get arrested, he still goes back for Tyler. And that's the only reason why he came back. He didn't came back to, you know, because Clay was going to run away at that point. He was going to run away because he didn't know what else to do. He was scared, and he knew they were going to arrest him. He had no out. He had no alibi. He had nothing, and so he was going to run. Yet Tyler calls him and says, "I really would like for you to be here if you can make it." And he says, "All right, I'll try." And he does show up, and that gives Tyler the courage to stand up and say, "Hey, he was sexually assaulted by Monty." He doesn't exactly at that point. He doesn't say that. He just says, "Hey, I was a survivor." Like that. That's a powerful moment, and that's a really powerful. Like all of those kids who stand up and say that in that moment, it's a powerful moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's and I like that for Clay, right? For his character, like it just shows it how loyal he is as a person, and that's
But
cool.
something that I saw, and I'm not necessarily sure about how this was considered, but there is a scene where, like, we do see Taylor taking pictures of himself,
Yeah,
to show how he's
yeah. I was
healing.
gonna bring that up too.
Yeah, that that I really like that, because we only saw Tyler as a photography nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So it was. I like that he found a way to like cope,
Mm-hmm.
or to cope through the thing he likes.
I mean,
But then
it
there's
was.
also like that when Jessica and her team, go on to protest during the home game. Then when they take off the, see like the
You're breaking up
that
quite a
they.
bit right now.
Oh, am I okay now?
I mean, it comes and goes. We'll see.
Okay. What I want to, so during the homecoming game, see Jessica and their
Still breaking up.
friends. So hold on a second.
He has left. We are alone now, ladies and gentlemen. So now it's time to talk about HC. And he's back. Definitely wasn't doing
Um,
anything.
yeah. So with that said, during the protest on in the homecoming game,
Mm-hmm.
and where Jessica and her friends are, putting red paint all over their bodies to like symbolize that they're hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and like, this is something I didn't get, if they did it because Taylor showed Jessica the photos, or if it was just an idea they had. I don't remember what sparked what, but that was an interesting way to symbolize it.
Yeah, sure.
Although on the same time, you do see that Taylor is kind of uncomfortable with it.
You keep saying Taylor. By
So
the way, it's Tyler.
Tyler, okay, Tyler, because I'll tell you
It's not the
what,
same thing. Don't you dare.
uh,
I'm just giving you a hard time. You're fine.
yeah, let me finish this. That I think the proper pronunciation of that name here would be Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe because the translation on Netflix also says Tyler instead of Taylor.
But you were saying Taylor. It's Tyler, though.
Oh. Point is, pronunciation in different parts of the world is different.
This is true. But yeah,
Like,
yeah, I completely agree,
but
though. Like that was.
but seeing his reaction to that is kind of like, you know, the date got me like I'm so sorry for this kid. Like they're
Yeah.
trying to do good by him, but I can't. But at the same time, he's like,
But yeah,
ugh.
I did like seeing them kind of flip through all the different images he had taken of himself over time, right? And you could see like the progression of him, like the bruises going away, and then, him becoming a bit more open in his stance and more kind of proud in his stance and smiling a bit more. And I also like, I don't know if you noticed this, but they do a thing with color in those shots, with lighting in those shots, where you can see the
Yeah,
shots get
this is
brighter.
something yeah, this is something I want to say that
Like that was a good
throughout the
use
entire
of that was a very
like
good use of cinematography in my opinion, and
yeah, and also notice
photography.
yeah, notice though that throughout the entire season, the way they distinguish the flashbacks with the current
Yes.
stuff is that like the current day
Mm-hmm.
scenes are like are a bit grayer and are a bit more depressed, and they are in like
Yes. Yes.
there
Yes.
are
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and there are like aspect ratios to them, but the flashbacks are more colorful and they take off they take all the they take off all the screen,
Very
which
rarely do you see the flashbacks have this kind of slightly darker tone. Like when things are, like when the kids are upset or kind of
it's
angry with one
it's
another, you have this
usually
moment of where the shots are a bit darker. But for the most part, especially in that kind of, I guess you'd say happier moments, the flashbacks are brighter and are more colorful. I was going to ask if you noticed that, by the way. So I'm
yeah
glad
I
you did,
did
because I noticed
I
that as
did
well. I'm like, that's
like
good. That was clever.
dude dude, this is my territory.
Hmm.
I'm noticing this
I
kind
didn't
of
know if you were going to
stuff.
bring it up though, but I was definitely going to. But yeah, I'm glad you noticed that because I noticed that too. So I would definitely say, from my perspective of
This
not
is
having a lot of
something,
experience with cinematography, I thought that was really clever.
yeah, I like it too. And, I did bring this up to my mother because she barely notices these things.
Mm.
But I told her, no, and then, like, in episode 5 or something, she's like, man, HC, thank you for telling me that because now because
Once
then
you
she
notice it, you
started,
can't unnotice it. I
yeah.
don't think, like
Uh,
personally, like once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Like it's so prevalent and so there. But I mean, I think it's a good thing though. I think that was really well done.
I agree.
But I mean, I think that's kind of the overall thing of this entire season of I think this is a better season than the past two seasons, and there's a lot of good stuff here that I think is worth the watch for. I don't think it's all perfect. Like I said, you've definitely heard me nitpick a few things. It kind of got annoying
And
over
nothing is
time.
perfect, though,
No, this
especially
is
with a show
true.
like this.
Like if you look hard enough, you can nitpick anything, right? But I think overall, like this is the best season they've had out of all of 13 Reasons Why, right?
I still think I would stand by the first season as the best of the three, but season three was definitely a strong outing.
Mm.
Like, as someone who was so skeptical about there even being a third season, I was pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else we should go over? Because we're kind of going over a lot of the
Yeah,
big stuff
yeah.
and the big side stuff.
There's an ambulance over here, so sorry about that. Let's
You're
go
fine.
over that.
Um, yeah, I will say, right, like, thinking of some of the small things, I did enjoy seeing kind of Bryce and his mom reconnect somewhat, right?
Mhm.
And them kind of growing closer, and Bryce even standing up to his grandfather for his mom and defending his mom against his
Yeah.
grandfather, right?
Two parts that actually made my mother cry.
Mm.
So,
Like it was nice to see that. Like even if like these two had a terrible relationship, and being for him as a son and her as a mother, like it was nice to see that. It was nice to see them grow and reconnect, and it really kind of made you feel like even though he did do some terrible things, like you felt for her for losing her son, right? Normally, when something terrible like that happens in the family, you want to blame the rest of the family too, right? Like you want to say like, how could you let your son do something like this? And you could see, right? Like she did for a time hate her son. I don't know if she hated, but she disliked
like
what he had
she did,
become at the very least, and
yeah,
she didn't approve.
yeah, she definitely didn't
And she
approve, and
definitely
I think.
at the very least, didn't think he deserved any happiness. Like, you could see that.
Yeah, and I think she also knew that her divorce from his father also kind of might have
Yeah,
affected them to an
this is
extent.
true. And, you see all of that, and you have, and then you see that slowly change where you see, like, okay, this is, because you kind of see her being so cold to her son at first, and then you see the growth and the change over time, and then you learn why that growth and change happened within his mom, right? Because you see that, hey, Porter's back in this season, and he's actually, kind of a therapist for Bryce and his mom. Like, he's kind of taking them both, especially Bryce mostly, but he's taking them kind of through counseling, and he helps them both grow to understand, like, how, he helps, Bryce's mom understand, like, this is how Bryce thought she saw him, that she absolutely hated him. And she prove, and she kind of turns to Bryce and says, hey, that's not true. I have my own issues. I wasn't a good mother, but I don't hate you. And you kind of see and learn, like, that you have a scene of them kind of having a laugh and playing around and, like, messing with each other when they're painting a room and everything. And, like, that's a beautiful little small scene. It definitely brings back the question of, like, can you forgive someone who's done some, who's raped someone like Bryce has, or raped many people like Bryce has, but it still was pleasant to see. It was a nice and, beautiful little scene of, a son and his mom reconnecting even after everything the son had done, even after everything the mom had done. So it
Again,
does.
this is a discussion. This is a discussion that could literally go on for 3 more hours, but
This is
we
true.
don't
Like,
really have
you
the
really
time.
could have an entire episode based around, like, how do you view, Bryce and what he did, and, should he be allowed to move on from that? Everything about that could be its entire own thing. You're right.
The short answer I kind of give is no, no way, too little, too late. But then again,
I
you could make an argument for each side. So
You could. I think I would definitely stand on. I think I would stand on the side of, yes, someone should be able to be, maybe not forgiven for it, but they should be able to move on and given the chance to change. But I don't think it should ever be forgotten, and I don't think they should ever necessarily be forgiven for it. But I think everyone does deserve a chance to try and change if they're willing to. But I think you need to be also aware of, hey, someone still deserves to be punished for what they've done and the crimes they've committed and the things they've done to others. They deserve to be punished for that. Absolutely.
yep,
I don't think we should ever
agreed.
let that slide, and I don't think we should ever fall into the habit of saying, well, you can ruin this person's life, so we're not going to punish them for it because it would ruin their life. I don't think we should ever fall into that. Someone does something wrong, they deserve to be punished for it, end of. Even if it ruins their life, so be it. That's the consequences of the choices you make, end of. If you wish to come back from that, I think you should be given that chance, though. And current climate, current outlook is very much, we don't do that for a lot of people. We make it very hard for them to come back from any choice they make, whatever the crime might be. We make it extremely hard for people to show that they have changed, to give people a second chance. And we should change that. And we should also
Yep.
change the
I
way we look at how people get punished too. But that's an entirely different discussion for an entirely different type of podcast, anyways.
Yeah.
But I
So
think
with that
but it is
said,
something we can state within the show. Um,
mhm. With,
Other small moments that I can think of. Any other small moments you can think of?
Hannah's mother coming back was
Yes, was
uh,
interesting.
was interesting. And I'm not sure about you, but there's a like the last thing Clay and her say to each other is that Clay asks her, he asks her you didn't tell me if you think I killed Bryce, and then she tells him you didn't ask if I did it, and I'm like, Okay, and I thought for sure that she was going to that she was the one to kill him.
That felt like that was just a
For
moment for the drama. Like, ooh, did
yeah, but
Clay actually do it, or did Hannah's mom actually do it? Ooh, and it's like,
the thing is that I never actually said because a lot of people just seemed, like if they did it, then they do a really bad job at hiding it. Like
mm,
Zach, for example. Zach throughout this entire season, I was like had the entire reason. Always acted like he has a reason to do it. Like when the group decides to stick to Tyler, and it's like, oh no, we're not sticking up to Tyler. He seems to be the most distant from anyone. Like he's the one that has something to hide.
mm.
So that so there's that, and at the same,
Yeah,
and
I'll be
then
honest. I didn't when they showed like what Zach did to Bryce. That I didn't expect. That one actually caught me off guard too. Like, yeah, Zach had something to hide the entire time, but I didn't think it was going to be that he actively went there and just beat the shit out of Bryce.
by the way, on that note, when the fight during the homecoming game breaks, man, seeing the way
Oh
Bryce
God.
breaks,
Oof.
that was, I felt that.
Yeah, that made me
I
wince.
felt that.
That made
That
me go.
was, yeah.
It was just one of those things. You did it too well, and it kind of made me go, "Nope, I gotta take a minute." Like, you did that too well. It's the same with how he broke Bryce's leg too. Like, you did that too well again. Gotta take a minute. Just ee. But talking about that, right? Like all of these kids, all these people, like really good actors, in my opinion. One thing I'll complain about: why was there so many damn sex scenes in this season? Like Jesus Christ, it felt like almost every episode had one. And as someone who's watching people who are supposed to be 18 years old and in high school, it kind of felt like a little bit like I'm way older than these supposed characters, and I feel a little bit off watching so many sex scenes with all of these characters.
you know, there was definitely an overabundance of
Yeah,
them.
it did feel like in my opinion, it felt like I get it, high school, I guess, rampant sex between kids. I don't know if maybe this is another one of those Wolf is just too old to get it anymore. Maybe kids are in high school and having rampant
Um,
sex. I don't think
you
that's the
know,
case, but
even
maybe I'm
even
wrong.
if even if so, some of the it's not necessarily that there were someone, but these were shot like if these shots were a bit more open, this could have actually been a pornography.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the selling point. I think that's what you're trying to say.
It,
That is,
Not
it's
exactly. It just felt like a bit much. It felt like there was just
yeah, but it's
rampant
not
sex.
just yeah, but it's not. But I don't think it's just the how many scenes there are, but also how they're shot.
I guess,
Because
yeah, I guess that plays a part in it too. But it does feel like I don't think kids are having as much sex as this show seems to portray them as having, right? Like maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't get it, but I don't think that's the case. Maybe that's just me
uh,
though. Maybe kids are just absolutely going at it like rabbits all the time. As far as this, and that's
by
how
the
this show
way,
makes it feel.
two things about this. One, yeah, watching this with my mom, probably the most awkward thing I've ever done in my life. That's one. Two,
Oof.
two, there is the prostitute that Alex goes to,
Mm-hmm.
and um, there's a point where like they don't do anything. He just cries, and she hugs him and listens. You
Mm-hmm.
know, do you think that's something that actually happens?
Yes, it is. Like
You know,
this is actually a
uh, uh,
proven thing. Like you can actually look it up and learn a bit about it if you want to. Many people go to there are plenty of stories where you can hear about people going to, prostitutes and escorts and just not having sex. They're just there to talk. That's it.
mhm.
They're just there to talk to them. Like that is a
Yeah.
proven thing that is absolutely true. Like that happens.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
part of
So
the job for them.
Yeah,
just
okay.
listening to people.
So in that case, I support. You
Yeah,
know, any help a person can get.
yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Silence.
So
I mean,
yeah,
I think
I don't.
other than some maybe small moments or nitpicks, I don't think there's much more I can say about this show. Like I like this season, surprisingly enough. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's a good thing yet or a bad thing, but I enjoyed it.
I agree. And so, with that being said, I think we went over everything that we have.
I mean, I definitely went over
Uh,
everything I kind of wanted to go over, at the very least, right? For me, if there's anything you
yeah,
wanted to go over.
I think we went over everything I had to say. So, with that said, that's all for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed. Have you? Obviously, you did, but what did you think about season 3 of 13 Reasons Why? What do you think about the new characters, about the mystery, about Bryce's arc? What do you think about the fact that there's going to be a fourth season?
Mm.
You can tell us all about that in the comment section below on our
Wolf's not happy
Tumblr.
about that one, at least.
Well, I didn't ask you, I asked the audience.
Well,
So
you
who
got my
cares?
opinion anyways. Meh.
Yeah, I got it a few minutes ago. So yeah, I'm back.
You get it again. But anyways.
So you can tell us all your thoughts in the comment section below on our Tumblr, which is known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and yeah. With all that said, I was HC,
And I've been Wolf.
and we will talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.